it's a weird logic that you've tried to
It's
use
not a
here, which
weird logic. It's a
simplifies.
one-to-one
Yeah,
comparison.
I don't think it is, but you know,
Of course you don't.
the
You're
point
you're
is
you're an
that
online internet skeptic. You're going to say anything to
well,
make sure Christianity doesn't have any sort of logical foundation.
I'm also a skeptic offline. Does that count?
How many fedoras do you own?
I don't have any fedoras, I'm afraid. Maybe you bought them all.
Anyways. Hello, how are you? And just real quick, how old are you?
I'm good. I'm 53.
Oh, what's up, bro?
Yeah, look, it's interesting you've copped so much criticism from fellow Christians for your tone of voice. Seems fine to me, but
Thank you.
I'm coming at it from an atheist position, so they clearly feel there's some obligation on your part to talk in a certain way.
Yeah, we're supposed to give everybody love and kisses and just kiss them on the forehead and tell them they're fine all the time. That's the Christian.
Right.
That's in First Opinions 5:13.
First Opinions?
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard of opinions. Yeah, so no, I mean my experience of Christians is that being Christian in of itself doesn't create a better person. I
agree.
don't see any correlation, but I wanted to talk to you about the idea of convincing you to leave Christianity, and obviously, clearly, I'm not going to do so, but I want to pretend that I am, in the sense that, to me, Christianity really is it's extremely specific. It's extremely narrow, geographically located story about very particular people in a particular time, in a particular part of the world. And I wonder, if you had been adopted at birth and flown to, I don't know, India and grew up there, whether you would expect that you would be a Christian now, or you'd probably be a Hindu.
Yeah, so that's just the genetic fallacy.
It seems to me that picking one, a genetic fallacy.
Yeah, it's just a genetic fallacy.
No, I didn't raise. There was no genetics involved in.
No. So do you know what fallacies are?
Yes, I do. But sorry, hang on. So you're saying that because I proposed a hypothetical where you were adopted as a baby and raised in India, in that culture, that I'm positing the argument that if you were raised.
No. What I'm saying is no. That's not what a genetic fallacy is. A genetic fallacy, and I just pulled it up to make sure I quote it right, is a logical fallacy that occurs when someone accepts or rejects an argument based on its source rather than its merits. Ticky Tack came in with $10. Says, I'm drunk and you are mean. Stop being mean. Be drunk like me. Don't be drunk, bro. Jesus says to be sober minded. All right.
But I'm questioning the basis of choosing Christianity as a sort of as truth, in the context of there being thousands of other creation stories.
Yeah. That's a genetic fallacy. Right, you're rejecting it based off the source rather than off of its merits, off of its argument. So you're saying this is a source that comes from this part of the world, and there's other things that come from other part of the world, so therefore it's false. That by definition is a genetic fallacy. It doesn't prove or disprove anything.
Yep. I mean, I don't. To me, it puts more burden on Christianity to justify its truth nature when there are so many other stories that humans have come up with, and there's a much more comprehensive and detailed explanation that humanity as a whole has collectively come up with. So I mean, that would be the basis of my criticism. I don't I'm not saying it's just because it's come from Israel and in that time of the particular part of the world. It's just more that it exists in a kind of matrix of so many other possible choices, and most compelling of which.
So I'm going to show you how you're doing another fallacy, right? What's the answer to 2 + 2? 4. Why is it 4 when there's millions of other numbers you could pick from?
Well, because the numbers themselves are part of a whole language of understanding, a logical understanding of mathematics.
Yeah, that's fine. So, but you picked a specific number You're saying it's correct.
Yes,
but there's millions of other numbers you could pick from.
Framework of mathematics determines. It wasn't my choice to make that determination. It exists as part of a whole.
Right. So it exists. It's true. It's true no matter what. But what I'm saying is 2 + 2 = 4, no matter what, despite the fact that there's millions of other numbers to pick from. So just because Christianity exists and there's millions of other religions doesn't mean Christianity's false.
No, I think there's probably a cool name for that fallacy, but you're suggesting that by picking, I could choose from many different numbers. Mm-hmm. But my response is that the answer is inherent to the structure of the language that we use to understand mathematics. So if I was to say, why is Jesus God? And you said, well, because of the Bible. It only makes sense to you because of the Bible. There's no other.
Why? I don't say Jesus is God because of the Bible.
Doesn't exist outside of mathematics as a logical.
Right. You're missing my argument completely. Right. You're making the argument. Hold on. So I'll explain. So everything exists in mathematics, right? Logic exists in mathematics, right? We have something that is identical. So we could say we can turn this into a mathematical equation, right? We could say Christianity is identical to the number 1. Right? We could say Judaism is identical to the number 2. We could say Hinduism is identical to the number 3. Right? Then we could look at all the arguments that we have for Christianity. We say which number does that equal to, and we could say, well, that equals to 1. So we can give a mathematical argument for that. Makes sense. You return and say, well, even though the argument that you're bringing forward does equal 1, there's a bunch of other numbers out there, so therefore it's less likely that it's 1. That's what I'm saying. So using logic, right? Because the law of identity.
I disagree. I think.
I'm not done. I'm not done. So using logical, right? Using mathematics, right? 1 is a representation of a thing, right? That's the law of identity. That's why I can say, I am John, right? I'm identical to John. John is 1. That's the 1. So, right? Mathematics and logic, they go hand in hand. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, but you began that whole hypothetical by saying, okay, we assign 1 to Christianity, 2 to Judaism, and etc. But that's not mathematics. I mean, I could say 1 to dog.
It is mathematics. So I'll just give you another hypothetical. I'll just give you another hypothetical instead of I'll just give you another hypothetical instead of arguing this, which you clearly don't understand. So exploring reality, my friend.
You don't listen, mate.
My exploring reality, my friend just came up with this hypothetical.
You're not really discussing this.
Exploring reality, my friend came up with this hypothetical. He said, John, ask him if we should doubt a doctor when they say one medication will help a disease over any of the thousands of other medications.
Yes. So your point?
Why should I trust a doctor?
We're doing this again. We're choosing a number and assigning it to.
No, I'm not. We're not doing numbers. You didn't like the numbers. You didn't like mathematics. I'm giving you a different hypothetical.
All right, great. Let's hear the new one. That's cool.
Okay, I'll repeat it again. And I'm not going to take credit for it. It's my buddy Than. He says it. He says, John, ask him if we should doubt a doctor when they say one medication will help a disease over any of the thousands of other medications.
Well, again, that depends entirely on the context of the medical system, the doctor's application of it, the doctor's ability to do so. I mean, just because the doctor says you should, take 1,000 Panadol or 1,000 paracetamol, if you stub your toe, you're going to apply all sorts of metrics of credibility to whether you accept that advice. So I'm not sure.
Okay, but what I'm saying,
doctors are generally believed by default.
You're completely missing the arguments going over your head. Is the fact that there's thousands of other medications disprove that this one medication will help you?
No. Okay,
then why is it the fact that there's thousands of other religions disprove that this one religion is true?
Well, because my original point was that there are thousands of other options. So that you need, if the doctor says, well, you could choose from 1,000 different medications to solve your health problem, and I would say, well, which would you recommend? And he said, okay, well, I suggest you take chlormoxifenitol. And I say, well, why is that?
Okay, so let's say you're diabetic, and a doctor recommends that you should take some vitamin C. The Great Grilled Cheese comes in with $10 super chat. Says, John, are you familiar with young Don situation? If you're not, can you explain why so many apostatize when studying church history and trying to reconcile all different doctrines? I am looking into the young Don situation. I will talk about it on another day when I'm more informed. Sorry, bro. Go ahead.
So you were telling me about doctors giving diabetics vitamin C.
Yeah. So if I walk into a doctor, tells me I have diabetes type 2. And I say, doctor, what is the solution to fixing my diabetes? And he says, take some vitamin C. What's going to happen to me?
You're going to become high in vitamin C.
Will I live or will I not?
Well, that's not determined by the vitamin C and the type 2 diabetes alone. You won't live forever. You'll eventually die. There could be multiple causes. It's a complex illness. It's
type 2 diabetes.
Illness,
if you do not take insulin, what happens?
Plenty of type 2 diabetics don't take insulin.
That's not true.
So you can adjust your lifestyle to address it. Insulin is digested. So
right. So you're playing a semantic game and refusing to answer a question. So I'll just rephrase. Okay, let's say I have terrible cancer. What is going to be the medication that gets recommended to me by a doctor?
Again,
I meant type 1, sorry.
Let's say the one you know.
Okay, so I'm going to get recommended chemo, correct?
Okay.
Is chemo the correct answer?
It might be for that person.
Bro.
Yeah.
Stop being a dick. You're being you are absolutely being a dick.
Terrible example.
You're the kind of guy that I say, hold on. I'm going to explain how you're being a dick. If I said to you right now, hey man, should you drink water? You would respond back, well, you shouldn't drink salt water. That's how you're being a dick. And you know it. Right? So somebody has cancer. Generally, what's the type of medication they get?
I'm trying to get to the underlying logic that
you're not trying to get to the underlying logic. You just refuse to answer a question and you're being a dick. So again, if you have cancer, generally, what's the medication that you're going to take?
Well, we agreed that it's going to be chemo.
Okay. If you have diabetes, generally, what's the medication you're going to take?
It depends on the illness, but you think it's insulin. So yep, insulin.
Okay. Is that the correct answer?
Well, yes. If that's the framework that you
does it matter?
The only answer is yes.
Does it matter that there's millions of other types of medications out there?
Yes, it does.
Really? Okay. So the fact that, I'm a type 1 diabetic, I misspoke. I'm a type 1 diabetic and I require insulin. It matters that there's these other medications like whatever. That matters. That's going to change the factor. It's going to make it less likely that insulin's the correct medication for me.
Well, a doctor is still going to explain to you why you should take insulin. They're not going to just say, shut up and take this.
That's fine. You're not answering my question. Does it make it less likely that insulin is the correct solution?
It's a weird logic that you've tried.
It's not a weird logic. It's a one-to-one comparison.
I don't think it is, but of
course you don't. You're an online internet skeptic. You're going to say anything to make sure Christianity doesn't have any sort of logical foundation.
I'm also a skeptic offline. Does that count?
How many fedoras do you own?
I don't have any fedoras, I'm afraid. Maybe you bought them all. Anyways.
So it doesn't matter how many other medications are out there in the world. The correct answer is insulin. Why does it matter how many religions are out there if the correct answer is Christianity?
So my original point was that it's too specific a tale, and it doesn't compete with, it doesn't have anything about it which is markedly better than any other origin myth.
Well, that's a different contention. That wasn't your original contention.
In comparison to science, which is created by humanity as a whole through a shared
science
language.
Was created?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was.
Okay.
Anyways, beings create things.
Anyways, that's not the original argument you brought forward. The original argument that you brought forward is that it's one religion that comes out of Israel and there's many other religions, so therefore it's less likely to be true. That's the argument you brought forward, yes?
Yes, but you disagree with that if you've got 2,000 choices, that the one you've chosen is the correct one, but there's no.
We're not even getting there. We're still not there yet. We're still trying to figure out if that's an actual issue. That was your original argument, correct?
Yes, it's
Okay.
too specific.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
fails.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Do
it's a
you
starting
now
off point, but if that's what
understand?
wanna
Do you
stick
now
with.
understand with the medication example using your exact same logic
Yeah,
that
it's
you
not a
applied?
difficult. It's not a difficult simile, but it doesn't really refute my original.
It 100,000%
Point.
refutes your original point.
No, but as I tried to explain to you, and you got frustrated with me because I wasn't choosing one answer. All these
No, because
situations
you're
that we
being
came up with,
pedantic, not because you
they're
weren't
all
choosing one
nuanced
answer.
and they all require explanations, logic, rationale,
Yes, I'm not.
data, all these things.
Listen. I am not saying just to
I mean,
believe
if I was, let's
Christian.
say I came from,
I'm not
let's say I
saying just to
flew.
believe Christianity because the Bible says so. We haven't even gotten into the argument for Christianity yet. I'm not making a case for Christianity. I'm not telling you why Christianity exists. The only thing that we've done so far is show you how your argument doesn't logically follow. That's all we've done so far. You could still
To
reject
me, you've only
Christianity.
shown me how you rationalize away the initial objection. But for
I have
me,
showed you. If we can't move past it, I'm going to move on to the next person because this is
fine.
logic
Yep,
101.
you've done a superlative job of reassuring yourself and for purposes of continuing the conversation, me.
Okay. Okay. Rephrase your argument then. The same one that you came in at the very start. I want you to give it to me in a premise and a conclusion.
Well, can I use wacky scenarios like you did? Like, let's say I'm born in Africa and I come to Australia and I begin to become extremely thirsty and lose weight. And I can't figure out what's going on. I'm low energy. I go to the doctor and he says, well, you've got type 1 diabetes. And I said, well, what's that? He says, well, that's a disease that I know about because I'm a doctor. And I say, well, how do I fix it? And he says, well, you've got to take this thing called insulin.
Sorry, just pause 1 second. Blue Truth Seeker came in with $2. Says I'm adding to the bingo chart for atheists. All right, go ahead with your your example that has nothing to do with the original question I asked. Keep going.
Well, that's a weird way to bring me back into the conversation. Yeah. So then I say, because I've grown up in Africa and I lived in a rural circumstance, I've never heard of these diseases and this medicine. So do I say, okay, doctor, great, thanks very much, and walk out of the room? Or do I say, well, what is insulin and how does it work?
Yeah, you asked those questions. I don't disagree with you.
Why do you believe it's going to help me?
I don't disagree with anything that you just said. Now, let me explain the actual argument you brought forward. Now, I'm sitting there. I don't know nothing about the insulin. And I say, doctor, what is insulin? How does it work? And then he sits there and he shows me all the data and all the information. He says, this is the reason why insulin works. And I say, okay, fair enough, doctor. Good explanation. But here's the problem, doctor. As I could see on this other piece of paper, there's 5,000, or sorry, let's say there's 1 million other medications out there. There's a medication for cancer. There's a medication for balding. There's a medication for. I'm not done. I let you speak. Let me speak. I'm not done my speech. I'm not done my speech. I'll let you speak. I'm not done my speech. I'll let you speak. There's a medication for erectile dysfunction. There's all these medications. I can see on this piece of paper that there's 1 million other medications. So how do I know that your medication for insulin is the correct one? Clearly, there's so many out there. So therefore, this one should be, it should be less likely that this one's the right one.
Okay, so let's just backtrack again. So on the basis of your refuting my initial statement, which I see this how the anyway. But there's someone in the comments telling everyone about the joys of worshiping Gandalf and how the ring.
Are you gonna address my objection?
Well, I'm presenting my original statement in a way that perhaps maybe you. Because
so you're not going to address my objection?
To hyper focus on one aspect and just fill the air with objections to that, and not
Are you going to address my objection or no? If not, I'm going to jump to the next person.
Well, my original story was I'm coming from Africa. I'm going to the doctor. I've got diabetes.
So are you going to address it?
And then you said, well, there could be 1 million things in erectile dysfunction.
All right, I appreciate your time, man. God bless.
Culturally different.
Appreciate your time. Yeah, he wasn't listening at all. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. If you want to watch more, you can click one of these and you can keep watching.